Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 32 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
We are, of course, reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, a book about world mythologies from
around the world.
We are, of course, finishing up our section on Norse mythology today with the stories of Ragnarok, the end of the world.
I think the last time, didn't we talk about not having it in this room? I hear an echo. Do you hear the echo?
Do you hear an echo? I don't know.
It's kind of a tinny sound.
Possibly.
We need to move it down to the basement.
We could do that.
Down in the man cave. By the way, why do you have so many sharpened pencils?
That's a really weird question.
You have like 20 sharpened pencils.
Well, I had all those up in my dorm because I needed pencils and they only come in like big packs. And so
why would you need a pencil?
What do you mean? Why would I? To write things.
I haven't written with a pencil in years.
I write with pencils all the time.
Well, I don't make as many mistakes, I guess.
Oh.
I mean, do you really write with a pencil?
I do a lot of my homework in pencil.
Why?
In case I mess up. Well, I don't do a lot. I do my homework in pen. I take tests in pencil.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I don't want to have to worry about scratching out answers on tests.
Right. I was a little worried.
But yes, thank you for asking. That's a little insight into my test taking, I guess. But yes, like I was saying, we are, of course, reading about Ragnarok and discussing Ragnarok this time in this 30-second episode, or as you said before we began, the Infinity 2 episode of Unlimited Opinions. I don't think we're quite there. I think we're a little ways off.
Been a long season.
Apparently.
We need to figure out what our next season will be.
Yes. So if you have any suggestions, tweet those at us at our Twitter, ULMTD Opinions on Twitter. Let us know what you think we should cover.
Well, do you have any ideas?
I am out of ideas.
Really? You had 2 ideas?
I had enough for 2 seasons. Okay. That's where we got.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking over different things, but I like the idea of having a book or a guide.
Mm-hmm. So do I.
I think that's been working out pretty well, but I think maybe, I don't know, maybe have a book that doesn't have as many chapters.
Possibly.
You know, maybe like a shorter season.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we take a little bit more time with each one of them.
True.
Bigger topics or something.
True.
But I'm interested in like political theory, political philosophy, but I don't know if that's really something we want to go down, or crime and justice interests me too. Ethics.
Of course.
A whole season on ethics.
We could.
What other kind of subjects?
I don't know. I think there's just an infinite amount of subjects. I don't.
Yeah, but there's only so many we want to talk about.
That is true. I mean, I'm a fan of all the humanities and that sort of thing. Humanities. I mean, that's kind of what we've done already. We've done philosophy. We've done mythology. We can just talk about language. That's all we should talk about.
Well, yeah, I'm not such a big fan of the mythology, though.
Really?
I think, yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
Oh, it's fantastic that you're telling me that now in episode 32 of our second season, all about mythology.
I think I mentioned it in the first episode.
Probably.
I'm certain of it.
Oh, almost definitely.
Yes.
But yes, that long-winded tangent was just...
It's not a tangent. That is directly related to our podcast.
Okay, sure.
The pencils comment was...
That was a tangent. But the point is, recommend us books. Tweet at us and recommend us things that we should read. And we will absolutely check out whatever you recommend.
You know, maybe we should have our contest for season 3 be... Our podcast for the next season will be whatever it is that you suggest.
We could do that.
But... We'd have to have within reason. Maybe we'll have nominations. And we have to pick from the nominations.
That's actually not a bad idea.
Although
then we'd have to get more than one person to recommend a book for us to read.
Unless we really like that recommendation. And then if it really is bad, then I'll just create a burner account and suggest something I want. Defraud our listener.
Yes, that's a fantastic idea.
I was on the radio the other day. We were actually on the radio, local radio, almost simultaneously at other sides of the state.
Really?
Because I was at the local AM radio station doing a little ad, and you were doing a radio program in Kirksville.
Yes, I was.
Like maybe an hour apart.
That's pretty incredible. So people could have tuned into both of us live on the same day.
Yes.
Those lucky people.
And both of them stream.
Do they?
Yeah. Well, the one here does, and I know yours does.
That's true.
Listen to your radio program.
That is true. Anyway,
Wednesday would be your radio program.
That is true.
You should probably broadcast something at that same time for your fan. I don't know.
Well, where would I broadcast something?
I don't know. How would you do that?
I don't know.
You know, I've often played with the idea of having my own radio signal. It's actually a violation of federal law. FCC.
Yeah.
Who was it that I was reading about? It was somebody I read about it, and then I listened to an interview. And gosh, who was it? Somebody had a bootleg radio station that they created as a kid.
Interesting.
Out of radio equipment, and they had a signal that would go just a couple blocks in any, like in a circumference, I guess.
Huh.
And then eventually somebody knocked on the door. But who was it? It was some really interesting person, but of course, it was older enough. Like maybe somebody that was a kid in the 50s or 60s or something.
Interesting.
I think we should do that.
Violate federal law and
pirate radio
for the subdivision that we live in.
A little bit broader than that. Maybe cover
so we can really get fined.
And Crystal City. I don't know. I mean, I guess they could eventually triangulate.
Yeah.
We'll have to have countermeasures.
This is ridiculous. Do you have any other random thoughts that you'd like to share before we actually start discussing the topic today?
No, that's good. I'm done for now.
All right.
Ragnarok.
Yes, Ragnarok.
The death of Balder.
Yes, that is the story we're starting with. The death of Balder.
Sad story.
Yes, it is a sad story. Any other thoughts before I start this story?
No, I'm waiting for you. You usually do a very good job of summarizing the topic, and then I go into color commentary. So
yes, thank you.
We're ready for the summary. You ready?
I have been ready.
Okay. Well, let's kick it off. I don't know what you're waiting on.
Okay.
How many minutes are we into this thing already?
Stop talking, please. Balder was the god of light, brother to the blind god Hodor, and he was beloved by all. But one day a dream of his own death came to him, and so he sought Odin's aid. Odin prayed at once for a vision, and he saw the head of Vala the seer, and knew he must travel to her grave in Hel's kingdom. Odin moved quietly through her kingdom, and everyone disregarded him, for they were all preparing the hall for the arrival of an esteemed guest. He at last came to Vala's grave, and she saw all things future and past, and so Odin called upon her to come forth, and she appeared in a foul-smelling mist. She asked who disturbed her, and Odin proclaimed that he was Vegtam, son of Valtam, and he wished to know the fate of Balder. And Vala revealed that his brother would slay him. Vala then also revealed that Hel was preparing for the arrival of Balder, and Odin returned to Asgard to discuss this with Frigga. Frigga then set out through all 9 lands to seek the pledge of every living creature, plant, metal, and stone that they would not harm Balder.
Well, wait a second.
Yes.
So I have a very important comment. So he tells his wife, right? Wife that this death is going to happen, and of course the Balder is supposed to be like perfect person, everybody loves.
Yes, him. Essentially.
And so she listened, and that's Frigga, Frigga, and she says the words that should strike fear in the heart of any man talking to his wife or girlfriend, which is, quote, "I have a plan." And anytime you're talking about messing with the fates, the mythology, or any other stories, and you hear some bad news that may come to pass, or will come to pass, the last thing you want to do is come up with a plan. Don't you agree with that?
I think so.
Every time.
I think so.
They make the plan come to fruition.
Yes.
By trying to thwart the plan.
Yes, that's what happens.
Thwart the inevitability, and they make it worse every time.
Of course.
Well, I have a plan, and they did in this case too.
That is true. Well, we haven't gotten there yet.
Well, I just wanted to make that.
Yes, I appreciate that point.
It's never a good idea to come up with a plan to fight the fates.
Yes, that is a word to live by right there.
Unless your plan is to just act out randomly without a plan. Just do random things.
Yes, but I still don't think you could escape the fates.
Not for Ragnarok. I mean, I don't even know why they tried. But I guess they didn't know it was going to be... Did they not know it was going to be Ragnarok?
Well, they don't know that yet.
Yeah, because they just thought it was to try to avoid the death.
To try to protect Balder. Yeah. Yes.
It's already been preordained, it sounds like.
Perhaps. But yes, so Frigga went out and sought the pledge of every being that they would not harm Balder. And so it was that Balder was... Okay.
But I don't know how this works. I was confused by this. So just because you have a pledge to not hurt this guy, I don't know how that's enforced, but evidently, even when people were trying to hurt him, which is later in the story, they couldn't because there's a pledge.
Well, it's like every individual element, essentially. So she asked the grass and she asked the stones, and they all promised, we're not going to harm this dude. So it's not like individual people. It's just like the world itself has promised not to hurt Balder.
Like the heat miser or the cold miser from the Rudolph the Reindeer thing. It's like that they're the element, the forces of nature.
Yes. So it's a personification of like the world itself. She's asked every individual part of nature, every being, that they would not hurt Balder.
One of the best songs
Yes.
from all of Christmas animated shows was the Heat Miser, Coal Miser.
Yes. Yes, the Rankin Bass cartoons, which also did the first animated Hobbit movie in 1977, I want to say.
Is that the one that's the part live action, part animated?
No, that's Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings. That was a year later.
I liked that.
Yeah.
I really did. And it was because it was part live action, part animation. It was just kind of...
Well, it wasn't live action. It was animated. Tracing over live action, but
right,
it's a neat art style,
Yeah, but it was so different, almost haunting.
Yeah, it's kind of freaky, But yes, back to the story of Balder. So Frigga had gotten all of these pledges, and so it was that Balder was immune to every injury. And it became a game to throw spears and arrows at him, which would harmlessly bounce off.
Almost any injury. Almost.
Yes, unfortunately.
There's a little foreshadowing for our listener.
Yes.
By the way, I did make a mention.
Oh my God. I get one sentence of the story in.
When I was on the radio, it's a local AM radio station, and I know the station manager, and it was a fundraiser for the Kiwanis Club. And so as a fundraiser, the basically radio station does a great thing. They donate a Saturday morning and afternoon airtime, and then local businesses sponsor a 15-minute interview section. And so, you know what the first thing I said in my interview, I should have taped it. They said, welcome, Mark Bishop from the Wegman Law Firm to our program. And Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit something about your firm? And so I said in response, Good morning, Barry. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the listener out there. And the station manager just stared down at me.
That's pretty good.
So that went over like a lead balloon, but I laughed.
I'm sure you did. Back to the story. Yes. All loved Balder except for the jealous Loki, who disguised himself as a beggar woman and came to Frigga, who kindly offered the beggar woman her hospitality. Loki chattered about Balder and unconspicuously asked if everything had sworn an oath to not harm him, and Frigga revealed that only the tiny mistletoe sprout was overlooked. Loki then quickly left, gathering mistletoe and attaching it to the tip of an arrow, then coming to where Balder was surrounded by adoring gods and goddesses. Hodor was standing alone, upset that he could not join the games due to his blindness, and so Loki encouraged him to fire the arrow that he had. Hodor did so, and to his surprise there was silence where he expected laughter, for Balder was dead. Hodor was immediately sent away before he could even have a chance to name the one who had given him the arrow, and Asgard was filled with grief. Frigga then sent Hermod, her swiftest son, to Filheim to beg Hel for the return of Balder, and so he set out on Odin's horse Sleipnir. Frigga and Odin carried their son Balder's body to the sea, where a funeral pyre was lit, and full of grief, Balder's wife Nanna leapt into the fire with him. The gods all offered their most prized possessions, including Odin's ring Draupnir, and the pyre disappeared into the sea. Balder was gone. Hermod had now been traveling for 9 days and 9 nights, finally coming to the Hall of Hel, where he found Balder and Nanna quite content. Hermod begged for 3 days for Hel to return Balder, and she finally gave in, saying that if every living and inanimate being mourned Balder, she would return him. Hermod returned to Asgard, and Odin sent messengers to all corners of the universe, asking everything to shed tears for Balder, and every single being did. However, as the last messenger was returning to Asgard, he noticed an old beggar woman in a cave, and no matter how he pleaded, she would not shed a tear for Balder. Odin himself came to see this woman known as Dry Eyes, and when he looked upon her, he saw what all the others had failed to see. It was Loki, and he was responsible for Balder's death. Reading here for the book. The sacred code of Asgard had been broken, for blood had been spilled by one of their own in their own land. The end of the world was nigh, but first, Loki would be punished once and for all. And that is the story of the death of Balder. Like you said, a very, very sad story. Just really kind of ominous how, I think really unavoidable the whole thing seems, because even at the beginning, Odin sets out, seeking this aid, and you get immediately this really moody sort of, foreshadowing. All of these undead people are preparing the hall for this guest, and you find out later, well, that guest is Balder. He's going to come into the underworld. He's going to be in Hel's kingdom. So it's a very unfortunate story.
I think the true lesson that we should all take is that we should not allow the blind to practice archery. What was that blind guy even thinking? I mean, come on. And what is it? I mean, what did he?
Well, I mean,
what did he expect to achieve? No one's going to say, "Oh, that's a great shot, blind guy." Even if he hit the
he just wanted to join in. He felt left out.
Sometimes blind people are going to be left out. They can't see.
Well, it really his blindness didn't really affect what had happened because nobody else knew that mistletoe would have killed him. It just so happened that he was the one standing off to the side and happened to throw the arrow. It could have been anybody. His blindness is not crucial to the plot here, at least as far as I understand. Because only Frigga and Loki know that mistletoe had not sworn that oath.
True, good point.
Yes, thank you.
Refuted it effectively. Now I have a question.
Of course.
Do you think that you could ever love someone enough that when they die, you would throw yourself onto their funeral pyre and be consumed in flames?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
I think that's a hard sell. That is a hard sell. But it was a common thing for the Vikings.
But it's always the women.
It was always the woman.
Yeah, that's weird. But it's a historical thing. Women committing suicide after their men die or perish.
And how much of it was like suicide, and how much of it was like expected by the rest of the people, and they were kind of forced into it, I think is a matter of debate.
Oh, really?
I think so. Because, I mean, if you have your entire populace, it's the expected thing that if the man dies first, the woman joins them. And then all of a sudden, well, yeah, that was at least for the warriors' wives.
Is that right?
Yeah. They would join them on the funeral pyre. And so if you have all of these, predecessors, all of the people around you, and you decide, yeah, I'm not going to do that.
What about the kids, for crying out
loud? Yeah, because then you're perceived as, potentially wanting another man. Because if you stay alive after your first husband's dead, what do you have to stay alive for? That was the line of thinking. Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. I think that's probably what would keep me. What not that, but what it would probably keep me from murdering someone who killed my spouse. Is the fact that I would be punished and kept away from my family. And then, maybe because it would be bad. But I don't know about... Well, then I would worry about the moral ramifications of suicide.
Yeah.
Because I would expect... Well, I believe... Well, I don't know. If I guess a lot of times it's not rational. I guess it's almost never rational. Well, sometimes I guess it is, but I would worry about throwing that gift away of life.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes. Well, I really like this story. I think there's a lot of really cyclical elements here because the whole all but one promised to help him, and then all but one cries for him, and that sort of thing. This is also another example of pretty much every mythology we've covered has one of these, but of somebody traveling to the underworld to recover somebody and failing. That happens. I mean, we saw that with the Native American myths, of course, with the Greek myths. It just pops up time and time again. Just the finality of death is really a common thing in just about every culture. We've all tell stories about trying to recover somebody, but it never, ever works out.
Well,
sometimes it works out
for periods. Like the changing the seasons, they come back for the summer and that stuff. But it's always like a compromise of some sort.
Yeah.
But it's pretty rare, and it's always under some limited kind of almost torturous. And it's only for the gods, really, the powerful.
Happens in Tolkien stories in the Silmarillion, actually, too.
Yeah, nobody cares about Silmarillion.
Oh, that's kind of rude.
Aren't they making a movie out of that? No. We already talked about that. Kind of. We're boring our listeners. By the way, are you getting excited about is it Amazon that's making the Tolkien thing?
Yeah, it is. It's coming out in September. It's not about the Silmarillion. It's about the Second Age, which is like before the Lord of the Rings, between the Silmarillion. They don't actually have the rights to the Silmarillion, which has a lot of the information about the Second Age. They have the rights to the appendices to the Lord of the Rings, which is like the bonus information at the end of the Lord of the Rings. And so they have like a basic framework, but the general thinking is that they're kind of making things up.
Are you getting excited about it? Are you interested in it?
I'm interested in it. I don't know if I'm excited more than anxious. I think I'm worried about if it'll be a massive mess and kind of just disregard the source material.
It's kind of like Blues Brothers 2000. It was so good, the first Blues Brothers movie.
Like, I'm sure it'll have good elements and good things. Like the Blues Brothers 2000 had a great soundtrack, still had all those, pretty good, famous musicians. But
you would have thought that John Goodman would be okay, but it was just awful. Didn't they have a kid in it?
Yeah.
It's been a long time since
I've never seen it.
It's unwatchable. It's horrible. It makes me angry.
Yeah, that's why I've never seen it, because you've talked about it so many times.
20 years since I've seen it. It was from 2000, so and it made me angry. It soured the story and the legacy of the Blues Brothers.
I'm sure it did. Because people were already unhappy with the Hobbit movies too, and the ways that those kind of went off from the books.
Really, because the Hobbit was much better than.
Oh my God, no, it was not. It just was not. It was not.
Well, it had a better actors.
Also, I would say it did not, but that is your opinion.
Well, you had in the Lord of the Rings, you had, what's his face, the Ranger. He's pretty good.
Viggo Mortensen.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. Ian McKellen as Gandalf, John Rhys Davies as Gimli, Orlando Bloom as Legolas. Why can't I think of his name? Why can't I? This is embarrassing.
That's who?
Frodo. Why can't I think of his name?
Oh yeah, the guy I hate.
Yeah, the guy you hate. But Sean Astin, Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
It was a good cast. It was a very good cast.
What is his name that I hate?
I don't know. Now I can't think of it. It was...
He will not be said.
he will not be named, who played Frodo Baggins. This is really embarrassing for me. I feel like I'm... Man, this is unfortunate.
It has been purged from my mind. He's the worst actor. Period. That's it. He was just horrible in it. He ruined the entire series.
Oh my God, no!
Trilogy.
Elijah Wood, that's right. Yeah, no. He's good. He was very good in that role. Yes, I know you hate him. Anyway, we should really get back to the story. It's been like 20 minutes and we've covered.
Who's really good in the movie I just saw was Daniel Radcliffe, because he was in the.
He was Harry Potter.
Oh no, he was in the Lord of the Rings.
Oh my God!
He was in the Sandra Bullock movie that came out recently. That's your wife, my wife. Your mother, my wife, and I saw it, and it was entertaining. He played a bad guy. It was very good.
Interesting.
Yeah, and your mother went through the whole thing, and she's like, "Who was that actor that played that guy? He was really good." And I said, "That's the Harry Potter dude."
Yeah.
She's like, "What?" And she didn't even see it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
He did that good of a job that you forgot about his other role.
Wow. Good for him. Good for him. Anyway. Back to the story.
Harry Potter is so much better.
Oh my God!
Than,
you it just is not. It objectively is not. Not even close. Anyway, the next story is the revenge of the gods. Before the gods could unleash their wrath, Loki transformed into a fly and traveled to distant mountains, where he built a cabin with doors and windows on all sides, so that he could see anyone approaching. By day, Loki haunted a pool by a waterfall in the shape of a salmon, and Odin waited for a long time for Loki to finally become complacent and lower his guard. One evening, Loki sat weaving, for he had just made the first fishing net, when he saw the gods nearly upon him, led by Kvasir, who was known for his wisdom. Loki fled from the back door, leaping into the pond as a salmon, and Kvasir grabbed the net, for he had seen fish scales on the floor, and knew that Loki was in a stream. The gods proceeded to the stream, and waited for daybreak, when the salmon would enter the net, but Loki simply swam under it. Kvasir then ordered rocks to be placed in the net so it would cover the entire depth of the stream, and as Loki swam by, he leapt over the net, only to be caught midair by Thor. Yes, thank you for that. Loki transformed back into himself, and Thor raised his hammer to kill him, but Odin stopped him, saying that death was too good for Loki.
Always a mistake.
Yes, another mistake.
Always a mistake. Every time I watch a movie with my sons, and there's like an evil bad person, or even like when the evil bad person has the good guy, they don't hesitate. You're already a murderer. Why would you delay the killing of like James Bond?
Yeah.
There's always some scheme. Oh, I wanted to torture him.
To be fair, the torture here is pretty brutal torture.
It's very yeah. I would agree. If you're going to torture somebody, this is the way to do it.
Yes. And so that torture was that Loki was taken to Filheim, and his two sons Vali and Nari were brought forth. And Vali was enchanted to become a wolf, killing Nari, whose entrails were then used to bind Loki to 3 great stones.
By the way, that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that is pretty awful.
It had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
The Sons did. And he has one make a wolf, and then they take his entrails and tie him up and stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty grim. Yeah. Pretty grim. These rocks were then placed on a precipice to ensure that if one wrong move was made, Loki would fall to his death. Skadi then caught a poisonous snake and hung it over Loki's face, where it dripped venom into his mouth. And Loki convulsed and screamed so terribly that his wife Sigyn begged to be allowed to stay with him, holding a bowl over his head to collect the poison.
Well, if you insist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Reading again from the book, the work of the gods was done. They turned then and left, and Sigyn remained with her husband, ever true to her wedding vows. Every day or so she moved from her position at his side in order to empty her bowl, and Loki's convulsions brought an earthquake to Asgard that lasted just as long as it took her to return with her bowl. They would remain there until the end of time, for the gods, that is. The end of time was nigh, and it was Ragnarok. Yeah, so pretty unfortunate for Loki here. He gets the short end of the stick, I guess, and just one of the most brutal punishments I think I've ever heard of. First seeing his sons get killed one by the other, and the other become a wolf, and then tied up and always covered with poison. This is actually the Norse story of why earthquakes happen. It's because it's Loki moving underneath the ground, and causing the earth to shake.
Well, if you read any about Ivan the Terrible, there's the ways in which man has found to torture other men or women or children is really unlimited. I think it's pretty horrible. Different torture techniques and stuff like that.
It is rough.
Real students of it, I guess. But so this is pretty bad, especially since he's a god and he's going to live for a long, long time. Evidently.
Yes.
The poison was a nice touch, I thought.
Yeah, you think so? I think there's just a nice little cherry on top of the cake was to have poison constantly dripping into his mouth.
But what was the myth about the thing that would die every day?
Prometheus? Where he was chained to the rock and the vulture ate his organs every day? Right. Or ate his liver?
Yeah, that's pretty bad. I think that's worse.
You think that's worse?
I don't know. Do you think?
I don't know. Liver or poison in the mouth?
Yeah, but
you also have to consider that Loki saw his sons kill each other, and he is also chained to a rock on top of a precipice. Prometheus is just kind of on a rock near the coast.
Yeah.
So at least you could feel
it depends on if he knows it's going to happen every day.
That is true.
Is it worse that it goes away and comes back? Like you start over and you're fresh again?
Well, Loki only gets the poison every so often. So I guess that's a point in Prometheus' favor, because for the most part, he's protected by his wife. It's only for short periods of time that the poison then drips on him. So, true. I don't know. I think it's up for debate who really has it worse.
You'd think she'd get like some sort of funnel.
You would think so.
So that you can redirect it permanently. I guess it's not. She didn't think of that.
Yeah, perhaps not.
Anyway.
Moving on to the story of Ragnarok itself. Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, had been prophesied since the beginning of the world, and Baldur's death had set it in motion, and there was now no stopping it.
And is that because there was blood spilled in the god kingdom?
Yes, because they signed, because that was part of the agreement between the Aesir and the Vanir, the two sort of parts of the gods, and they agreed that no blood would be shed, or else, terrible ruin would come upon them, essentially. Right. Ragnarok, that's what I just read. Yes. Sol and Mani's chariots first slowed in the sky, and they were soon devoured by the pursuing wolves. So the sun and moon were destroyed, causing a terrible cold to befall the land, and it was winter for 6 long seasons. With the cold and darkness came evil, and crime was rampant among men, and the stars fell from the sky, shaking the earth. Loki and Fenris were freed, moving forward to wreak revenge on the gods. The dragon Nidhogg gnawed through the base of Yggdrasil, which shook tremendously as Fjalar, the rooster who dwelt in the highest branches, called out, and this call was echoed by Gulin Pamli, the rooster in Midgard. Heimdall then knew that Ragnarok was upon them, and he blew the Gjallarhorn, all the gods arming themselves and reaching the field of Vigrid, where the last battle would be fought. The sea tossed, and soon the world serpent Jormungandr was roused, and the waves yanked its tail from its mouth, and so it crawled upon land, creating a tidal wave. This was another part of the prophecy that if Jormungandr's tail was ever removed from its mouth, then Ragnarok would also start. This wave sent Naglfar, the ship of the dead, afloat, and it was constructed from the nails of the dead whose relatives had failed to cut them after their deaths.
That was weird. I didn't get that.
But that was a big thing among the Norse people, was that if somebody died, you better make sure to cut their nails, because all of the nails will be used at the end of time to construct this giant, disgusting ship made out of fingernails and toenails, which is really gross.
Yeah, your nails grow after you die.
Not really. It's just that the skin tightens around them, so it comes back a little bit, so it looks like they're longer. Your nails don't actually grow. I think that's just a fact.
No, they will grow for a short period of time after you die.
I think that's a myth.
No, that's not. We're reading about myths. That's a fact.
I don't think it is. I think that is a common myth.
Okay.
Okay. As the wind caught Naglfar's black sail, Loki leapt aboard, captaining the undead, and calling upon the fire giants of Muspelheim to join them.
I think it was a mistake at this point that they did not kill Loki.
Yes, probably. I bet they're regretting that decision.
Darn it.
Yes, unfortunate.
Now he's leading this undead group of fingernails.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. Another ship set out for Vigrid. This was steered by Hrym and bore all the ice giants. As both ships sailed, Hel came up from Filheim along with Nidhogg and the hellhound Garm, and Surtur and his sons destroyed the Bifrost, shattering the Rainbow Bridge. Odin quietly left the battlefield, going to the Urdar fountain, where the Norns quietly sat, accepting their fate. And he begged Mimir's head for wisdom, but it was silent, and he returned to Vigrid upon his horse Sleipnir. The armies faced each other, the Aesir, Vanir, and Einherjar on one side, and the fire giants led by Surtur, the ice giants, the undead with Hel, and Loki with his children Fenris and Jormungandr on the other side, and the ancient enemies then clashed. Odin first met with the wolf Fenris, but he was swallowed, causing Thor to stop in his tracks, the death of his father giving him the fury needed to beat blow after blow upon Jormungandr for many hours. At last the serpent died, but it exhaled a final cloud of poison, leaving Thor lifeless. Tyr fought bravely with one arm, but like his father, he was swallowed by the hellhound Garm, but as he passed through its gullet, he pierced the hound's heart, dying in the knowledge that he had obtained his life's goal. Heimdall met Loki hand to hand, good versus evil, and flames engulfed them both with a flash of light, and then they were both no more. The silent Vidar then came rushing to avenge Odin's death, laying a shoe upon Fenris that had been crafted for this very day, and he then tore off the wolf's head, laying still in its pool of blood. Only Frey was left standing, then coming face to face with the heat of Surtur. And with a cry that shook Yggdrasil, Surtur flung down bolts of fire that engulfs the gods' palaces and all the worlds below them. The seas boiled and a wreath of smoke blotted out the world, and all was as it was in the beginning. Blackness, chaos, and nothingness for all eternity. So yeah, this is like the big thing in all of Norse mythology, because this is essentially, kind of unique to Norse mythology in that basically every single element of all of the stories comes back to full fruition at this end. There's very few stories that are not represented here. Kind of, it's a
right.
big callback to everything that we've seen throughout these last few episodes, essentially, which is incredible because, that's a lot of things that they're able to call back here.
It's like end of days, and, violence and mayhem. And it was interesting. You overused that word, but it was to me that at the end there's blackness and there's a nothingness, but also there's chaos, which I think of nothingness and blackness as order or as a singularity.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was an interesting description of that.
Well, it's interesting how similar it is to the Greek myths also, because one of the Greek creation myths is that at first there was just chaos and Nyx, chaos being chaos and Nyx being night. So it's interesting that chaos is kind of paired with nothingness there.
Right.
You wouldn't think that would be the case.
I would think that things have to bump off each other to make chaos.
You'd think so.
A multitude of things. That's the way I see chaos.
But I guess for there to be order, there have to be things to have order. There have to be things to be for laws to apply to.
Well, I guess, but if you try to sort or order a group of things and there's none of them, then it's pretty easy because it's just a zero.
I guess so.
I don't have to sort these out. Otherwise, if I had 100 things and I had to sort them, it'd take me some time because you got to sort 100 things.
I guess that's
true. If
true.
I have nothing, then it's already sorted into something.
I guess that is true.
Nothing.
But if you have,
really, there's no something.
But if you
nothing.
But if you have nothing, who makes the laws? How can there be any laws without anyone to create the laws?
You don't need a law.
You don't need a law?
There's nothing.
You think the ordinary state of things is order and not chaos?
There's nothing. There's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's
not order.
No, I don't really consider it order or chaos. It's nothingness. It's a singularity.
That makes sense.
It's just it or not it.
I guess that is true. Yeah,
that was. I don't know if that was from the myth or from the author.
I believe it's from the myth.
Yeah,
I believe, but I could be wrong. But yeah, I love this story. I mean, it's just really interesting, the pairings that we have here. First with Odin kind of just dying, which is kind of unfortunate for him, but his story there is kind of interesting, as kind of being the symbol of knowledge and of wisdom, always desiring to have more, because really his whole life's goal, as we've seen throughout these stories, is to figure out a way to prevent Ragnarok. We don't get too much of it in this book itself, but in the Norse myths, that's really his goal in gaining knowledge. And that's why he lost his eye in the first place, was to gain more knowledge from Mimir's well. Right. And so now you see him at the very end of things going back to Mimir's well, and there's nothing left. Yeah. And all the fates are there, and they're accepting their fate, essentially, which is also an interesting picture. Yeah. But every god kind of...
What do you expect us to do with the fate? We're not going to try to stop it. What am I supposed to do? Get active? Yeah. One will say, what, do you want me to have a plan? That'd be a better story if they mocked him.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Beware of those that say, I have a plan. On an unrelated note...
Of course. You have a lot of those.
Have you... I don't know that I've ever read Revelations. That part of the Bible. I don't... Or if I have, it's been so long I've forgotten all of it.
Yeah. It's been a while. It's weird. It's out there.
Yeah, and we're at church a couple of weeks ago. One of the readings was from Revelations. And I was thinking, you know what? That just in Catholic Church, they just almost never have a regular reading from Revelations.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I'm getting really tired. It's a completely different rant. I'm sorry.
Oh boy,
I'm getting really tired of all the letters of Paul to the Ephesians and the this and that. I don't know. I'm just not
a fan of the epistles.
Yeah, the epistles. I just feel like I know it's in the Bible. But it's like, okay, it's one dude, and he's encouraging and stuff.
Well, not all the epistles are from Paul.
I know, yeah.
There's a couple from James.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think it might even be Peter.
Peter, yeah.
I apologize for my ignorance, but I have read them. But it's like, maybe we should listen to what Jesus said. Yeah. But maybe that's like...
Well...
sacrilegious or something.
I think a lot of the point of the epistles is like the practical ways of applying a lot of what Jesus said, because that's his whole thing in going out to all these different areas and writing them letters is like, hey, you're doing this wrong, or you need to prove on this because this is,
I get that. I'm not saying they're not valuable, but I'm just like, I don't need to hear what Paul had to say every week.
I guess that's true.
And they've been hitting me hard with it the last year.
Yeah.
I think there's been a real focus on the epistles.
Well, the church readings go in cycles every 3 years. Okay. Well, I'm just saying that because that's just how it happens.
I'm getting tired of it.
Okay. Well, I'm sure they'll switch over to a new cycle soon.
Yeah.
Or I guess they just did at the Easter season.
Yes. Well, but but like in the missal. Yes.
Yes.
But anyway, that's my little complaint.
Yes, thank you.
I'm sitting there in church thinking, why do I have to listen to another thing, a letter from Paul, for crying out loud.
Thank you for that tangent. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, I think it's fascinating the pairings that we have here, because each god essentially meets their final match and what they've been trying to do. Of course, we see Thor with Jormungandr, who he's tried to fight before. We saw him try to fish Jormungandr out of the water. It's interesting as Thor kind of the deity of thunder, and we kind of perceive him as lightning and that sort of thing, facing off this being that's somewhat related to the earth itself, encircling the entire world deep underneath the sea. So I think that's definitely a key part of that pairing there, sort of the air as opposed to the water or the ground there, which I think is interesting. And then Tyr fighting this hellhound Garm, I think is also pretty important, because Tyr, like we were talking about a couple episodes ago, I think it was, he's martial honor, and then what's kind of the opposite of martial honor? Just a beast, this hellhound, this being that doesn't really have any honor. It's just there to fight and to kill. What happens after that? Heimdall and Loki is interesting, because you don't really think, when you think of Norse mythology, and it's kind of a product of pop culture, but you don't really think of Heimdall as the figure of goodness, really, because now we've kind of been, I don't want to say tainted, but sort of stimulated by a lot of the Marvel stuff now. Thor's the big good guy, and he's sort of the key player there, but it's interesting that it is Heimdall and not necessarily Balder coming back or something like that, or another similar god of light. So the god of watching is sort of the person of good here versus Loki the trickster as evil.
Right.
Because Loki isn't always evil either.
No.
So it's...
But when he's evil, he's pretty bad.
That is true. That is true. So it's interesting sort of I guess...
He never really asked for forgiveness.
Yeah. I guess it's more of an order versus chaos thing here, rather than strict good versus evil, because Heimdall watching everything, that's sort of the embodiment of order, and then Loki, the trickster in all of these stories, is definitely sort of the figure of chaos here.
There's a lot of overlap between order and good.
Mm-hmm. True.
In my view.
True. Very true.
Know, can you have goodness without order?
I don't know. Deep thoughts. Deep thoughts. And then...
I think the answer is no.
Interesting.
Well, you certainly can't have a functioning society without order.
That is true.
But you can have good without order, I guess.
I don't know.
You can. You can have a very disorganized, good person, unfocused. You can be very productive, which is a kind of a form of goodness, I guess.
That's a good question. The figure of Vidar is interesting there because he was literally born for the sole purpose of avenging Odin. Jake Jackson doesn't really go into this here. He's a real minor character that just pops up for the Ragnarok stories. Like, literally, his only purpose is to avenge Odin. I think his name means something like the Avenger, essentially. So that's an interesting figure there. I'm just going one by one here, so of course he kills Fenris.
So I guess was he rooting for Odin to die then?
I guess so. That'd be
avenge him.
Yeah,
first he must die.
Well, the story is that he was born, and then the very next day he was like a full grown man and had like the power to kill any enemy that faced him, essentially. So sort of the vengeance there. And then Frey versus Surtur. We don't really hear a lot about Frey at all. He's one of the Vanir, interestingly enough. So he's not one of the Aesir, the family of Odin and Thor and all of them. So he's kind of the outsider god here. So it's interesting that he is the one left standing against this fire giant. But I don't really know what to make of that.
I don't either.
Yes, but those are my thoughts, all of the pairings there, because I mean, this is definitely one of my favorite sections here, and for good reason. I mean, it's the sort of known big thing about Norse mythology is this great, terrible battle of Ragnarok. Do you have any other thoughts on this?
No, I've shared a lot.
You not necessarily about this though.
Oh,
yes, you always share a lot. It's not always related to what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think. Well, I just echo a lot of what you said about the yin and yang. The struggles between the forces, and it is kind of a fun story where like you said, it kind of resolves all those storylines in their mythology in one great, grand, destructive annihilation of almost every character.
Yeah, because you really don't get that in a lot of mythologies, because usually they've, they died off in practice before they get to the point where we have like a really big sort of end times prophecy sort of deal.
Right, right. Agreed.
Yes.
That's why I was mentioning
what?
The Bible.
Oh, Revelations?
Yeah, Revelations.
Yes.
Blew my mind of the word.
Yes. The last story in this section,
Okay. Hear people talking about bringing upon the end times. It used to, when I was younger, it used to be a bigger thing. Yeah. I don't know if it's in the media or what, where people were like, saying, well, there needs to be like a war in the Middle East, and that'll bring upon the end of times. Well, Jesus will come back, and we'll all be saved. Or, it's like few at least.
Yeah. Well, it's a sin in the Catholic Church to predict the end of the world.
To predict. Yeah. What about to participate?
I mean, I feel like if you're trying to make it happen, I think that's a form of prediction. That's a form of.
I'm not predicting it. I'm just getting it done. I'm not really doing that. But but that would be the fictitious person's excuse. So it's not a sin. I didn't predict it. It's here.
I guess.
Welcome to the end of days.
Maybe so. The last story here for all of Norse mythology is that of the end of the world. The Earth
really is not the end of the world.
It's not. So interesting title that Jake Jackson chooses to use here. The Earth was purged by the fire, and with it came a new beginning. The sun rose on a chariot driven by the daughter of Sol, and life bloomed on the earth. And two new humans, the woman Leif and the man Leifthrassir, emerged from Mimir's forest, reincarnated at the end of the world. The forces of nature, Vali and Vidar, had survived the battle, and they were met by Thor's sons, Modi and Magni, carrying with them their father's hammer, Mjolnir. Honir had escaped from the Vanir, and Baldur rose forth from the deepest depths with his brother, Hodor. These few 7 gods examined the ruined world, but above them Yggdrasil still stood, which had trembled but not fallen. Reading this last section from the book, there was a civilization to be created, and a small band of gods with whom it could be done. The gods had returned in a blaze of white light, a light as pure and virtuous as the new inhabitants of the earth, and in that light they brought forth our own world. So this is a very interesting sort of part of the Norse mythology, because if you're reading it literally, it would assume that, people who practiced this mythology, this had already happened. So really, if they were, praying to the Norse gods, they would not, pray or offer sacrifices to Odin or to Thor or those sorts of things. They were presumably because they're all dead, but they did anyway. They still, we know that the Norse people to have, had talismans and sacrifices related to those major gods. But technically, Ragnarok has already happened. They're already in the new world, which is fascinating because we have all these stories about what no longer exists, technically.
It's kind of like a precursor to Adam and Eve.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's another big question, is this really a original Norse story? Because, again, most of our sources for Norse mythology were Christians and not actual practitioners of Norse mythology. Was this just sort of a way to convert, the Norse pagans, saying that, well, sure, your gods might have existed at one point in time, but here's the story about how everything actually happened and now all the gods are dead, and instead now it's our god, and these 2 first humans, sure, they're Adam and Eve, that sort of thing. So it's kind of unknown whether this is an actual, legitimate, Norse thing, or if this was, sort of a Christian tradition sort of overlaid and then kind of mixed in with the Norse mythology.
Yeah, I guess you'll never know.
Because Baldur is definitely a Christ-like figure. Is definitely the sort of thinking there, in a way, at least in his form of, being the light and the son of the main god. And
it's kind of a stretch.
I mean, he definitely resurrects like Jesus.
Yeah, but not until after the end of days.
I guess that's true. I guess that's true.
Coming.
That is true.
And his manner of death was by accident, and it was not a sacrifice or because of sin or some sort of redemptive power of his death. That's a pretty important asset or aspect of Jesus.
That is true.
So I think the light and the renewal. I think you're right about that. But I don't know if it's Christ-like. I think it's just similar to other really virtuous gods. But I don't know. Yeah. I'm not buying that one.
Fair enough.
I'm not buying what you're selling.
I appreciate it. But this is similar to other mythologies that we've seen, especially like the Greek and the Indian myths and sort of the cycles of destruction and then rebirth, and here's the new world and we're in a different age now and that sort of thing, which is another common thread.
It kind of leaves off, but it's not like it's going to return or anything.
Yeah, because there's no stories past this in any of the sources we have. It's just this is
it's our current world.
Yeah, that is true.
We don't know what happened yet.
That is true.
Maybe we're Norse gods.
Maybe we are.
What would you be a god of?
I don't know. I've never thought about it.
God of language.
Thank you for answering your own question, I guess.
I give speech to all those that want to speak.
That would not be a bad god power to have.
What would be the opposite?
The opposite of speech? Silence.
Yeah.
You would be a god of cynicism.
I already am. I'm a demigod of cynicism.
Or god of tangents.
Yeah, that's true. Or sarcasm.
Sarcasm, yeah.
Cynicism. I think
they're all related. I think.
Cynicism and sarcasm, yeah, probably. Yeah, and cynicism is just cheap or coward's philosophy, I think.
I think we've talked about this before.
Have we really?
Well, I mean, we did a whole season on philosophy, Dad.
Yeah, but about cynicism in particular and how it's just a lazy man's worldview.
I think you've absolutely talked about that. But feel free to.
But we've talked about it.
Well, feel free to share your thoughts then.
Okay.
No, feel free. Now I'm interested.
Well, considering that I'm a cynic, it's kind of self-critical.
Yes.
But it's easier to be a cynic than it is to actually believe in something, and it's a way to be safe from hope and expectations goodness.
Yeah. I know we've definitely had this similar conversation on the podcast about like agnosticism, because I think your thoughts on that are pretty much the same thing here.
Yeah, but I think it's different. I think cynics, agnostics are just lazy. You know, they're cowards because really they're just lazy atheists.
Yes, we've definitely.
Or they're lazy deists. Because they either believe in God and they just don't want to defend it or really even think about it too much. I'm agnostic. I can be here or not be here. I don't know. Or they're lazy atheists, which is like they don't want to actually come out and believe. Because it's hard to be an atheist because you almost have to believe in a certain aspect of nothingness as far as your soul and your identity and your intellect. It's either very brave to be an atheist or very cowardly to not have any faith in a way. But I guess we can go on that. Maybe that'll be our next season or something.
Maybe.
But I think cynicism is just kind of a clever, cheap way of not actually believing in anything. Because it's always easy to undercut somebody else's views by being a cynic and just being a critic of what they do, as opposed to putting forth your own belief. And a modern day cynicism, which is always kind of impugning somebody else's motives. You know, it's like I'm always cynic about these politicians or these people or that people. You always find a way to not believe in somebody. Yeah. And I think that protects you as a person who is a cynic from ever making the mistake of believing in somebody or something, because you'll never be disappointed because you're a cynic. And it's just a cheap way to make yourself feel like you're more intelligent or more knowledgeable than what you are.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm a devout cynic.
It's fantastic. You're so cynical that you're cynical of cynicism. That's incredible. That's almost unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like I'm a cynic cubed. I multiplied my cynicism because I'm cynical about my own cynicism.
That is absurd.
That's another singularity. It's
Yeah.
it's pure in thought. But it is also true.
Yes, that is true. Do you have any other thoughts on Ragnarok?
No, I have no thoughts.
You say this every time. Do you have any other thoughts on Ragnarok or on Norse mythology as a whole? Now that we are finished, and we'll be moving into Scottish mythology next episode.
To that.
Are you?
Yes. But yeah, maybe with the Scottish thing, I can make some references to kilts.
I'm sure you will make at least 3 references to kilts every episode.
No, I agree with you that the stories are really fun, and they're I think unique. Although there are a lot of similarities with the Indian myths, with people, the gods or higher beings traveling in disguise, and somehow fooling the other gods and deities till they look right in their eyes or something. Which would be kind of hard if they turned into a fly, but I guess you look deep into their eyes. Now I see it's Loki.
Yeah.
Bing. That was him changing from a fly.
Yes, I figured.
Or into a fly, I don't know. But I really enjoyed him. And of course, there was some similarities with the Tolkien stuff we talked about in previous episodes. But they're similar, but they're really kind of almost bizarro theories or stories about different powers. They're definitely unique from other mythologies. They're not straight, explanations for the seasons. There's some of that, but that's a really neat storytelling.
Yeah, I think they're definitely one of the most fun to read, because I've read some of the closest we can get to the source material. I've read the Eddas, and they're very just interesting narrative wise. Like they're not strictly this is the way things are because of this is the way things are because of that. It's very much here's a good story I want to tell, and here's how it relates to a bigger picture. And I do agree that it's unique, especially when you look at the gods themselves, because really all of their existence, all of these stories foreshadow Ragnarok in some way or another. Right. And really it's all the gods trying to prevent their own mortality, right? Because we saw that with the apples of Idun. Really, they're not immortal by nature. They're immortal because they get these magic apples. And, you get that gone and they start to die. And Odin's always trying to find knowledge of how to prevent it. And Thor's always trying to fight his enemies before they come and kill him at the end of time and stuff like that. So it's really It's an interesting mood over the entire sort of the sagas that we have here, in that, at the end of time, they will be no more, and they know it, and they're trying to do all that they can to avoid that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Which is very human in a way. Yes. Because I think that's a feeling that overhangs a lot of us, too, is that I have to do something before, I'm not here anymore. Yeah.
I think a lot of mythology is the explanation of humans, human pathologies and vices and virtues.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is similar to that. But yeah, you make a lot of good points.
Thank
you.
Good analysis. Thank you. Analyses? Analysis. Okay. Well, do you have anything else you would like to add before we end the episode?
Should I do the joke about Chinese, Japanese, Americanese analyses?
What?
Okay, never mind. I think it's offensive somewhere. But when you were a kid, littler kid than you are now, not that you're a kid, but never mind. We'll do that offline.
All right, I'm very confused. This has been season 2. Okay.
Where you say, I'm Chinese, Japanese, Americanese. And you
point to your knees. Yeah, okay, yes.
I don't think that's offensive, is it?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
If it's offensive, you can tell us on our Twitter.
Yes.
If you find us offensive, tweet at us at ULMTD Opinions on Twitter. But this has been season 2, episode 32 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
He's still Mark Bishop. To Scottish mythology too.
We'll have to get some music going, some Scottish music.
The first time we'll incorporate music at any point besides the intro and outro.
We have to watch Braveheart before.
I have never seen that.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good.
So I've heard.
Freedom!
Thank you for that.